You're listening to CDKL5 in color. I'm Marissa, and on this podcast, I'm joined by my co host Amanda, and sometimes some very special guests to talk all things CDKL5 deficiency disorder. It's a rare genetic condition caused by changes in the CDKL5 gene. Patients with this condition often experience profound developmental disabilities, difficult to control seizures that start in infancy, cortical visual impairment, and a variety of other health concerns. It's a challenging condition, but we know that by sharing our stories, we can raise awareness, provide support, and paint pictures of our community that can lead to greater understanding and meaningful change for families like ours. Let's jump right in. Hi, Amanda.
Hello, Marissa.
How's it going?
It's going well.
Good.
Yeah.
We are talking about acceptance today, and this episode's going to come out Mother's Day weekend, which I think is really fitting because all of us, I imagine, struggle with acceptance and accepting that our children have CDKL5 deficiency disorder and accepting the impact that that has on us and our families and moms especially. I mean, all
Yeah.
family members, but moms especially a lot.
Yeah.
And Mother's Day's, I don't know how you feel about Mother's Day, but Mother's Day is crazy emotionally for me, usually anyway.
Mother's Day is so hard for so many different reasons, right? People who are motherless for whatever reason, not everybody has a great relationship with their mom. Not everybody who wanted to be a mom gets to be a mom.
I remember when, because I struggled to get pregnant before I had Gregory, and Mother's Day was especially painful during that season of my life because, like you said, it's somebody who wants to be a mother and is having trouble. And
Yeah.
Mother's Day was really sort of dark. And then when I had Gregory, I have expectations of what Mother's Day would be like. And of course, what I expected Mother's Day would be is not what it is at all. And so it also feels, it's hard to reconcile that.
I try to, scoop a little joy out of Mother's Day as normally winter is officially over and we're not going to kill any little fragile plants that we decide to put outside. And
All
I guess
right.
maybe that's just an example of, doing something, find some way to cope with the day if it is terrible for you.
Yeah. Well, I think talking about coping leads into our topic, right? Acceptance. We've been talking about doing this episode for a while, and I've always felt a little bit apprehensive of doing it because I feel like it's such an important topic. And I really want people to walk away from listening to the episode feeling like they've either learned something or to think about something a little bit differently, or maybe get started on an acceptance journey if they haven't started. I think that's how I was in the beginning when Gregory was first diagnosed. So Gregory was diagnosed as a baby, 6 months old. And when he was first diagnosed, I would hear the word acceptance kind of around. And as you join into like the special needs community and CDKL5 community, and I remember it was a word that really triggered me to feel super angry because I was like, I do not accept this, that my son is not going to walk. He's not going to talk. He's not going to look at me. He's going to have seizures constantly. I don't accept it. And of course, I feel differently now.
My initial journey, she was undiagnosed for so long that there was nothing to accept yet outside of I can maybe fix this. So for a lot of years, I spent my time looking for an answer, reading epilepsy journals, reading all kinds of blogs with people who had diagnoses. And I think maybe it was just the permission to accept it was when we got diagnosed. And I was like, here's the answer. I can stop looking for what caused this. I can forgive myself for any, I think as a mother, you feel this really big burden of like, did I mess this up? Is there some kind of genetics in my family I'm unaware of? I ran across people in special needs groups that were like, I pumped gas and like they thought that some of these day-to-day things we did, they thought somehow environmentally they could have changed the outcome.
Blaming themselves, like, oh, I ate this, I ate the soft cheese or something.
I ate the soft cheese. Like just all of these wild things that, that's not why your child has CDKL5. And it happens so early that there's nothing you could do. Hopefully any of you newer mothers to the diagnosis, like just you didn't do anything wrong. You can't even entertain that anymore. Like drop that guilt and allow yourself to forgive whatever piece of your mind tries to take you there.
Yeah. No, it's true. None of this is anyone's fault, period.
Yeah. But it is, on us to figure out how to live with this in a way that's not destructive or, sad and just it's life altering, but it doesn't have to be the end of your joy or your finesse for life.
Let's talk about what acceptance is and is not. It's not smiling and saying everything's okay, right? Like that guy with the dumpster fire behind him, he's like everything's okay. It's not saying it's okay. Acceptance is more about acknowledging the reality of the situation that we're in and learning how to live with it, how to adapt to the new reality of what life is like, because this is not the life that any of us expected we would have.
And on top
And
of that, it's unpredictable, right? It's not like there's any you don't know where you're going with this disorder. You don't know what trajectory your life's going to take. And
totally.
that can be very hard. That in itself is hard
Yeah.
sometimes to accept.
When Gregory was first diagnosed, and I didn't want to accept that his story was going to look like what it looks like,
Mhm.
I didn't want to accept that. I'm going to use the word obsessed because I really was obsessed. I was obsessed with reading about CDKL5, but then also searching for hope in what I read. So, for example, if your child has a CDKL5 diagnosis, chances are you know where their mutation falls
Mhm.
on the exons. And I remember Martin Newey has this website, I'll link it in the show notes, explaining about CDKL5. And he has this graphic in there. It has the different exons for CDKL5, and it's a chart, and it has which exons your kids are the most likely to be a walker. And of course, it's based on a really small sample from one paper. And we know that you cannot predict what your kid is going to do based on their mutation or which exon. It's impossible to do. But there was this little graphic, and I was obsessed with that graphic because my son's exon was one of the ones where you're more likely to be a walker. Those little glimmers that potentially this was not going to, that he might be mild, that he might do more than what the majority are doing. Those little things sustained me while I fought acceptance until I got to being more willing to enter into acceptance. Those little things sustained me because without those little glimmers of hope, I don't know how I would have gotten out of bed. You know what I mean? I was
Mhm.
so like, you're telling me my 6-month old, and we have families getting this diagnosis, they're like 8 weeks old.
Mhm.
You're not even really behind at 8 weeks old. You're getting told, what is it? 75% of people with CDKL5 don't walk, something like that. Not like walking is the be all end all of anything, which is a whole nother conversation.
Right.
But you can't fathom it. You cannot fathom it when you have a baby and you're told these things about what their life is going to look like. So while I was fighting this, I don't accept that this is what's going to happen to him. My son's an IVF baby. Like, I fought for this baby. Do not tell me this is what is going to happen to him. And those little glimmers of hope really helped me as I processed my feelings to move towards acceptance. And I see a lot of other people doing that, really holding on or really obsessively looking for those little things that might mean this isn't going to be real for my kid. And I think it's part of the process I'm sure it's different from what you went through being diagnosed later, or maybe it's not.
No,
But
I'm
I
still
think
pretty much doing that just blindly, right?
right, yes.
Yeah.
No, I suppose you're exactly right. Those think those little things sustain us while we work through all of our stuff to get to a place to really walk towards acceptance. Because acceptance is really where we need to be. It doesn't mean giving up or quitting therapy or throwing your hands up and saying, well, there's no hope, so why bother? That's not what it is at all. It's getting to a place where you are able to live this life that's
Where
been
you can
handed to
just
you.
yep, at the end of the day, you can say, "Things are gonna be all right," you know?
Yes.
All right is a little bit different than what it was prior to this.
Hmm.
This too shall pass. That is one of my mantras that when I can't stop my loathing, I don't even know how to explain it, but when I'm getting ready to go into a dump on CDKL5 on the life or whatever challenges it's throwing, I start to tell myself this too shall pass. Let yourself move through it. You got to feel it, get mad, get whatever, but it'll pass. If we're in the hospital, right? I don't care if it's 2 days or 3 weeks. Nobody stays in one place forever. So just keep going, keep doing what you got to do to get through the day, and eventually you get to a different mindset where you can pick back up and, smile and find that joy and find that happiness in moments, days, however you want to measure, or, you know, whatever you need to feel, um, like fulfilled in life, I guess.
Mhm.
We only get one life. So, how do you want to spend your time? And
Do you think that getting to know our kids as they grow makes acceptance easier?
yeah, and I think honestly, accepting them for who they are and who they're working to be and not who we want them to be. In those earlier years, like early intervention, we did a lot of therapy. And I just kept thinking the same thing. If she could just walk, it would make my life easier. And honestly, it didn't make my life easier for her to walk. Some things became much harder. And sometimes Ava, like, didn't want to do the types of therapy we were doing. And in hindsight, I wish I would have allowed her and myself, but her, the break. Like, this is lifelong. You're going to be doing therapy for the rest of your life with your children or their life. Some type of therapeutic interventions are necessary to keep them physically at their best. You're not going to fix it. I think is part of that drive to do therapy and get them to get skills and whatnot. Let them lead you. Let them help you determine what the best use of your time is, and build a relationship with them. Don't just be the therapist. I felt like I was always facilitating her stuff, but that's different than being her mom.
Yes.
And I wish I would have caught on to that sooner.
Getting to know your kid as they grow helps you in acceptance. So, like, the life that I was so afraid of when my son was 6 months old is the life that we're living now. And guess what? Like, I wish I could go back in time and tell myself, hey, this is not the catastrophe that you envisioned it would be. It's hard and there's lots of things that I hate about it, but it's not the catastrophe that I was so afraid of when my son was little. And that's because I've been able to get to know him as a person. And I can't picture him any other way than the way that he is.
No, it's who they are. I mean, it affects every part of their body. It is part of who they are. They've never not had CDKL5. They were born that way, right? So I really had to reconcile that. I hate CDKL5, but also CDKL5 is a big part of our life. I have met the most incredible people, therapists, some of the scientists that I've met, and I would have never, ever, ever met these people. I'm certain my life would look a lot different. Some of the work I do with my accounting degree is so different than, cost accounting and manufacturing. Like, it really has enriched who I am and absolutely made me a better person. It doesn't, what would I choose for her if I had the choice? Well, I don't even go down that road. It's so hard to think about that. Life would be so different. And I don't know that that would be better. And maybe it's selfish of me, but I really do feel like she has opened my eyes to the world in ways I wouldn't have learned in a lifetime.
Well, and that right there is a coping skill, right? It's the ability to take something and reframe it in a way that
Yeah.
you're looking at what's positive about it.
Yeah.
Because nothing is all positive or all negative. There's always these shades of all of it. And, if you want to keep yourself down in the dumps, look at it all negative.
Yeah.
Like, look at all the negative. Look at all
Hmm.
the things you might be missing out on. Look at all of the things you expected and how those expectations are not being met. I mean, that's a perfect way to stay crying all the time and not
Yeah.
wanting to engage in life. It's not healthy to be doing that.
No.
I think we have to build up some resilience, and that looks like using strategies to change the way we think about something. I want you
Yeah.
to tell about radical acceptance and
Okay.
where
Yeah.
you learned that term and what radical acceptance means and the skills that you've learned that you have incorporated in your acceptance journey.
Yeah. So Ava was able to attend a preschool program, birth through preschool for children who are blind and low vision. It's called the Anchor Center in Denver. And for a while, they did some home visits. And the lady, Kathy, working with us was like, you really should come down and connect with the people and enrich yourself in this environment so you can help Ava more. And I did. We would go down to the center and Ava would receive services. And up until preschool in the infant and in the toddler programs, when Ava was receiving services, the parents that were there, and of course We're all there for about 4 hours during the day. They provided us with peer and psychological support. We had a psychologist who come in and worked with us, as well as a peer mentor of a much older child he was deafblind. And what they used was essentially a radical acceptance model to kind of pull us out of our funk. We would spend at least 1 hour in group therapy setting where we're literally in a circle and they'd bring a topic in and we talk about it. One of the earlier things I remember that really had me start shifting my focus was, instead of asking why me, you need to ask why not you. If you're trying to think you're a human who doesn't deserve some kind of adversity in life, like, flip the coin on that and say, why does someone else deserve what you're having? Or, do we really, is this a matter of deserving anything? And that was a way for me to kind of start, okay, all right, I got to get over like this pity party of mine. And one of the things that I will never forget that has really carried me through and helped me let go of some of the things that were really holding me back was, we sat one day with like a bucket and we had paper, and she was like, write down what makes you so angry about this. Like, what is it? And, we all went around and talked about what it was. And for me, it was like my career, my autonomy. Like, I went to college, I have a professional life, and it's all over. I don't want this. And, threw it in the bucket. It was really like it was really cathartic. And from that point on, I accepted that my life was going to look dramatically different and that there was no fixing it, there was no changing it, but I could change the way I thought about it. And the whole model of radical acceptance is just that. Like, you can't change the situation, but you can certainly change the way you think about it. We're not in control of anything but how we project. What is inside of us is what we can control. So we can be really angry and we can really dwell on the bad stuff, or we can try to dwell on the good stuff. And there's a healthy balance in between there. I mean, maybe don't
Mhm.
dwell on anything, but feel your feelings and work through them. But you can't be sad all the time. You cannot let this end your spirit. Maybe I don't know how to. You have to continue to find joy and live in a way that honors your kid. Even, how crappy to have a parent who can't, stop crying. There's a time for that,
Right,
but
yeah. I've
like,
right.
talk about feeling like a burden. Like, this lady can't do anything.
It's really funny you mentioned that because that is a thought that has crossed my mind and has also pushed me towards acceptance, is to think, I don't want my son to think he's not meeting my expectations and my mother is miserable. He doesn't deserve that.
No.
He doesn't deserve that. He is who he is. He shows up as himself all the time. It's my job to love him for who he is. And if I have issues, I need to work them out. Like,
Yeah.
it's not even about him. None of this is even about our kids. It's all about us
Us.
and really our expectations. And the worst thing you can have is expectations, really. But when you're talking about changing mindset, like, when I remember when you were sending me articles about radical acceptance and I was reading them, and one of the things was not only the mindset stuff, but then also the actions. So, using your loss of career as an example, I did the same. Like, I left my job. I had a career as a school social worker, which I left. Working full time when you have a kid with this illness is really hard. But that doesn't mean you can't use that career side of yourself to make an impact. Maybe that means the impact you're making is different. Like,
Yeah.
that's the mind shift, right? It's,
Mhm.
you know, this is not going how I anticipated, but instead of catastrophizing it and letting it ruin my life, what can I do? What actions can I take to still tap into that part of me that I felt like was lost?
Yeah.
What actions can I take to still tap into parts of myself that, I mean, and let's be frank, most mothers, whether they have a kid with special needs or not, are losing parts of themselves because of
Yeah.
the burden of, life on the shoulders of
Motherhood.
people who are, yes,
Yeah.
and people in our age range who are not only caring for children, but caring for parents and so many things. But how can you find time to tap in? We know having a kid with CDKL5 impacts every aspect of your life. It impacts your marriage, it impacts your relationships, it impacts your friendships, it impacts your career, it impacts your physical health, it impacts your mental health. So instead of throwing your hands up and saying, well, dang, like, my life's over, oh, how can you sort of get back on the track and still find meaning, knowing that a lot of a lot of your life is going to be dedicated to your child who really needs you
Yeah.
and finding a sort of balance.
Find the balance. For me, it was like, I am more than a mom. And that is not Ava aside. I was raised by a strong woman. Mom was never going to be my total identity. And I sort of felt like that's where life pushed me. And I was a little offended. But I started to think I have skills I can use, and it's ideal to get paid, but also I couldn't take the burden of having to commit to showing up in times I knew I couldn't consistently show up. Like the amount of work it takes for me to get someone to cover me, it's just too stressful for everyone. So I started getting involved with nonprofits. I mean, I was with the IFCR forever, but that aside, I had different local initiatives I worked on. And I'm kind of come back around to doing some of that. I work with a music therapy group now that's getting a nonprofit going, as well as Ava's hippotherapy group. And what I can do is drop in and be like, let me help you set that up. I can help develop things where I have experience both professionally and just through what I've learned being Ava's mom. I mean, I would have never thought my business degree would go from, cost accounting to nonprofit, but I mean, I picked up some skills there, and I can still share them and use that as my entry point into things that I want to be involved in. So it gives me a little bit of control, right? Even if I'm not always making money every second of the time I'm doing it, it's setting me up with the opportunities and the experience to then turn around and consult and make money where I really won't do it for free. And it's the freedom of that choice.
You have to find purpose. You have to find purpose in this life within the motherhood that you have and with your child, but you also have to find purpose outside of that.
Yeah,
Be
purpose and
it
connection.
and connection,
Yeah.
yes. So
I think
whether that's career based or it's fitness based or it's spiritual based or however you find connection with other people, you have to do it. You have to do it within motherhood and within special needs motherhood and disability motherhood. I mean, to me, some of my very best friends now have children that have disabilities and medical conditions. It's just who I identify with. But finding your purpose outside of that also is important. And it takes time.
it
And
takes time.
to be totally frank, the first years with Gregory were nuts. You don't understand how the health system works. You don't know much about epilepsy, you probably know nothing. You don't know, you've never been to therapy, physical therapy, any of these therapies before. You don't know how
The school
insurance works. You
system.
don't know, right, the school system. You're learning everything all at once. You're learning everything all at once. And you're dealing with all of these big emotions because this is not what you expected and it's not what you want.
And you're learning to be a caregiver.
Yes, exactly. And then what helps is getting to know your child as they grow and getting to know them as the unique person that they are, and time.
Absolutely time. I mean, they say time heals everything. I don't necessarily agree with the healing aspect, but with time, you get better. Your focus shifts. You can take that breath and say, it's going to be okay, right? You
Hmm.
might not be able to do that for the first 3 years. I don't know. From
Yeah,
birth through age 5 was terrible.
right. It's crazy.
Never slept. There was all kinds of things. I hope that those of you with younger kids, maybe hearing this helps you be a little bit gentler with yourself, because I've always said it doesn't get easier, but it gets better. It gets better because you get better.
Right. You get stronger every day that passes. You've learned, you build your resilience. And, when Gregory enrolled in the school system full time, that was really when I could breathe more
Yep.
because prior to that point, even preschool wasn't full time. So, like the baby years, you're going to therapy and you're working at home, right? You're practicing your therapies at home. You're down on the floor with your baby. You're doing the exercises like
You're learning all
and then
these
you're
systems,
learning, right? Yes.
right?
And you're trying to incorporate what you're learning. And then preschool comes and it's your first dip into the school system, but it wasn't full time in my case. So he went for a little bit, but then there was still this time where we're still doing the therapies and we're still practicing at home. And, then kindergarten comes and wow, he's with somebody else for like 7.5 hours. And it's scary at first, but then it's like, wow, you have time back to
And that
yourself.
and that's when I figured out I've got to be more than Ava's mom. Because that's who I was. Every hat I wore had to do with being Ava's mom. And that's when you can finally like take a breath and be like, okay, they've got this. The school's not calling me every time something goes wrong. Like I can actually go do something. And then I was like, who am I? I don't even remember who I was before I had kids. What did I do before? And Was that fun? So I don't know. I picked up a couple paddle boards. I try to get out with my other daughter and do stuff that is something we can bond over together. But I am still wondering, what do I want to do with my, I get my next act. I feel like it's like the second act of my life, and I'm still kind of feeling a little bit lost about who I should be or what I should do. So,
Do you think
like it's lifelong.
would you recommend therapy to people?
Absolutely, because, I went to therapy to move through my divorce in a constructive way in light of my other child, in light of co-parenting, all of that kind of stuff. Or that's what I told myself, right? But when I got there, like it was really working on what are my core values? How do I want to deal with things? I think if you're struggling, I think therapy is good no matter what. The more
Yeah.
I go, like it's just an unbiased person that I can dump on
Mhm.
that can really give constructive advice. Like, I
Yeah.
know, like, you are this person, and I'm not surprised you reacted this way, but maybe next time try this if you want
Right.
to, have a different outcome.
There are skills you can build to help you
Mhm.
when you are in a place of despair and desperation and sadness. There are tools that can help you. You don't have to suffer through that on your own.
No.
You can have someone help you learn things that can change the way you're thinking and feeling, because this is the thing, and I used to teach this when I was a school social worker. A lot of the things that I used to teach as a school social worker I've turned around and used on myself this past 9 years, because I have them in my toolbox, and they're not for other people, they're for me also.
Right.
Coping skills matter, and they can be really helpful. And I used to have this graphic in my office that was these three gears, connected gears. So what happens obviously is when you turn one, the other ones turn, and one was thinking, and one was feeling, and one was behavior. Because if you change any one of those, it changes the other two. So you change the way you're thinking about something can change the way you're feeling about it, and then what actions you take, your behaviors. Changing your behaviors can help you change your feelings and your thoughts about things. And for people who don't like to do a lot of mind stuff, there are actions that can have just as an important impact
Mhm.
for you. Getting outside, getting for a walk, doing some heavy lifting and things like that.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of things. You have to find what works for your personality and the type of person you are, but there are people that can help you
Yes.
learn how to do any of that
Learn.
thing.
And honestly, one of the biggest things that I wasn't good at was identifying the feeling.
Yeah.
Am I mad? Am I scared? Am I like, what is driving this discontent? So yeah, tools and different tools for different folks. And you might not even recognize you need support or need
Mm.
to do something or have the power, like that you are in control of yourself. I use meditation. Like I probably would have laughed at you
Yeah.
15. I mean, I would have been like, what? Like box breathing, even like if I'm physically triggered by something, I have tools, right?
Right. Taking the first step to reach out to a therapist can be super intimidating. And going to your first appointment, if you get there and that you don't vibe with that person's not the person for you, it's okay. Don't make another
Find a
appointment.
different one.
Find someone else.
Yeah.
Don't give up.
Yeah.
And there's lots of different modalities of therapy, so find one that makes sense for you. I know that radical acceptance is a DBT technique,
Mhm.
which is
Mhm.
a type of therapy. So I mean, I like ones that are action oriented. I'm not all about getting deep in my psyche and trying to talk about my childhood. No, I am action oriented. So a therapist that is going to help me build tools and set goals and make my situation better. I mean, because that's what it's about, right? It's about
Mhm.
making our situation better and working towards accepting that this is a life we didn't plan for, we didn't want necessarily, but it's a life that can be really awesome despite all the challenges. And
Yeah.
when you say it's all going to be okay, I also think that. And the reality of having a kid with a potentially life limiting diagnosis, because this is a potentially life limiting diagnosis, it all is going to be okay, even if you're outliving your child, even if the worst possible things are happening. It's all going to be okay, because that's how you survive to get to tomorrow. It just is. And it's heartbreaking, and we lose people in our community, but those kids were beautiful people that I'm so happy to know. And It's hard. Acceptance doesn't mean any of this is easy, but it means this is our life and we're going to make the most of it. We have to.
Yeah. So there's a Ralph Ellison quote I want to share, and it is: "Life is to be lived, not controlled, and humanity is won by continuing to play in the face of certain defeat." And, you have to play. You have to figure out how to have whatever life you want to lay out. It's different for all of us. And I mentioned the wellness wheel, and we'll link one of those as well, but it's also action oriented. What are my goals here, and what steps can I take? And, what do you need to do to get through that? And so, go. If you can't find your joy, at
Right.
least sometimes, right? If you can't just feel like, oh, damn, like, I'm glad I woke up today, or like, go find someone to talk to.
Yes, absolutely.
And you can do it on Zoom. Like, I like to go in
Yeah.
person. I don't, but so many therapists. You can talk with the therapist around the world if you need to.
Yeah. When Gregory was a baby and, in those early years where everything revolved around him, I used to cry. And I used to cry in the car a lot. And it wasn't because I was necessarily sad about anything, but something would pop into my head and I would just be emotional about it. So I wouldn't even say I was crying because I was sad. I was crying because I was emotional. And it wasn't bawling, it was like, getting welled
Hmm.
up in my eyes. And my husband, I would tell my husband about it. Oh, I cried in the car because I was thinking about whatever. So then he used to ask me, come up from work, and he'd say, how many days since the last time you cried? And I would say whatever it was. And then sometimes I would tell him about crying, and he would go, 0 days since your last cry.
It's kind of like you needed a fridge, one of them systems like
Right.
days since, and you.
Since the last, yeah. But that always made me laugh. Yeah. I don't know. It's all emotional. Before we end, I want us to mention that Welcome to Holland poem
Oh, yeah.
because I do think it's somewhat helpful initially to read that. I know some people hate it. I like it. For people who haven't read it, we're going to link it in the show notes. It's a very popular poem that gets passed around in the special needs community, especially for people who are new to their diagnosis. I
Hmm.
mean, I feel like that's when you really see it. It was written in the 80s, 1987, and it's a mom whose child has Down syndrome, right? I
Yes.
think. And she talks about, getting a diagnosis for your child is like you were planning a trip. You're getting ready to have your baby.
You're getting
It's
ready to go
like
to
you're
Italy.
planning a trip to go to Italy. You're reading the books about Italy. You're talking to all the people who've been to Italy, how great it is. You have all these dreams about what Italy's going to be like. You get on the plane and you go. And when you get there, they say, welcome to Holland. And you go, but wait, I'm supposed to be in Italy. And you're having to learn a new language and buy new guidebooks. And it's not what you expected because you never intended to go to Holland. But if you spend all of your time lamenting that you're in Holland and you didn't get to go to Italy, you miss out on being able to appreciate what is beautiful about Holland. And it's true, right? We didn't
Hmm.
go to Italy with these two kids, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't know each other.
We
You're in
wouldn't. We
Connecticut,
wouldn't
I'm
know
in
each other.
Colorado.
Right.
We would not know each other. And, a lot of the places I've traveled and the things I've done, I would have never done.
Never have done.
So, yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean, I really appreciated that when Ava was younger. As the years have rolled on, I don't know that it's not that I appreciate it. It just, my experience has changed to where, I think it's the one part of it too, where it's like, for the rest of your life, you'll say, yes, that's where I was supposed to go. That's what I had planned. But as the years roll on, I can't even imagine Ava any different. And so I don't ruminate on that Ava isn't something different.
Well, and I think the reality is that what I've learned as I've grown as a person and met more people and had my eyes open to more just life experiences, like a lot of people don't go to Italy for whatever reason. And there's a lot of hardship in life. And I
Yes.
think when I look at my life, yes, I have a lot of hardship dealing with what's all going on with my son, but I have a lot of areas of my life where I'm exactly where I thought I would be.
Hmm.
And, that's part of changing your mindset too.
Yeah, I don't
is
want anybody else's baggage.
no, I don't want
Um,
anybody
I
else's
mean,
life.
yeah, and I'll just finish with this. There's this little story. Essentially, it's about all of these people. Once a year, they have a festival, and they all go and they tie all of their problems up in a little bag, and they throw it up in a tree, and they like party for a day. And at the end, they all have to pick a bag and go home. And at the end of it all, you know what people pick? They pick their own bag and they head home. Because this is like a short way around it, but when you figure out you don't I don't want other people's stuff. It's not any less messy. People lose kids tragically that didn't have to understand this life of loss. There's so many things that happen. Life is hard for all of us. And the privilege I have is so much more than a lot of people in the world, with or without Ava, right? Like I have a warm bed, I have running water, I have a vehicle, I am sitting here on this computer, I have, we don't go without essentials. And there's like a large population of the world that does. So,
Mhm.
you get over yourself. It's something that like my mom might have said to me at one point or something, just get over yourself and get on with it, which
Right.
is a little harsh, but
So here's
um
the takeaway. Go to therapy, but also get over
get over
yourself.
yourself.
Well, I mean, it's so true. And, before I was a school social worker, I did child abuse and neglect
Oh,
investigations and case management. And my son has a lot of challenges, but my son is loved. He's provided for. He's happy. He's content. He's safe. And there are a lot of kids that can't say that. So, yeah, it's all
yeah.
about changing the way we think about it all and being appreciative for what we do have.
Yeah. Count your blessings, feel
Hmm.
your feelings.
Right.
It's a
Yes.
balance. Like it doesn't mean you're never gonna be sad or mad. Like I don't want
Sure.
people to take that away, which
No,
that's not what acceptance is, right? We kind of cover
no.
that.
Yep.
So
Good. Well, I'm so glad we got to talk about this.
yeah, yeah.
I hope it's helpful. We love for people to leave us comments, leave us feedback, tell
Yeah,
us your
what do you
stories.
tell us what you do? Like what is your coping mechanisms
Yeah.
or your
How have you gotten
mantras or
to, right? How have you gotten towards acceptance? Or if you're really struggling, reach out to us. I mean,
yeah,
we're happy to talk to you, not on the air, but like
not
just just in general. Like if you need someone to talk to who's been through this, we're both available to
yeah,
support our
to
community.
support.
And this is hard in the early years, especially. So
Yeah.
we're here for each other and
Yeah, it's hard and you'll find your way.
you will find your way. Thanks for listening. We hope you'll follow us on social media at CDKL5 in color on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and visit us online at www.cdkl5incolor.com. Have questions or a topic you'd like us to chat about? Would you like to be a guest on our podcast? Email us cdkl5incolor at gmail.com and we'll be in touch. Until next time.